The world was burning again, and the air smelled like metal and smoke. Captain Cole moved through the ruins with a cracked visor and shaking hands. The sky above him glowed red from plasma fire, lighting the broken towers like candles of war. Every step echoed on the shattered steel beneath his boots, each one heavier than the last. He had been searching for survivors for 3 hours, and found only silence. But then, through the storm and static in his headset, he heard a faint cry. It wasn't human, but it was desperate, weak, and terrified. Cole followed the sound through the wreckage until he found her. An alien soldier, trapped under a fallen beam. Her armor was different from any he had seen before, pale silver with cracks glowing faintly blue. She was bleeding, her breathing shallow, her four-fingered hand twitching toward him. When she saw the human emblem on his shoulder, her eyes widened in horror. "Leave me," she rasped in broken English. "My people will kill you if they see you help me." Cole stared at her for a long second, the wind howling between them like a warning. But he didn't move away. Instead, he knelt beside her. Setting his rifle down, her gaze hardened, defiance returning for a brief moment. "Human mercy," she whispered bitterly. "It's a trick." Cole ignored her words and lifted the heavy beam off her legs, his muscles trembling when she screamed in pain. He gritted his teeth and said, "Quiet or they'll find us." The sky flashed again as a squad of recon drones flew overhead. Scanning the battlefield, Cole looked up, eyes narrowing. He had maybe 2 minutes before they looped back. The alien woman, her tag read Rhea Vin, was fading fast. If he left her, she'd die in minutes. If he stayed, the drones would find them both. He made his choice. Cole reached behind his back, pressing a switch on his exoskeleton. The servos hummed to life, glowing faintly along his spine and arms. He slid his arms under Rhea's body and locked her into the emergency harness built into the suit. Her eyes went wide as her body lifted, weightless in his grip. "You're insane," she gasped. "Your command will execute you for this." Cole smiled faintly through his cracked visor. "Then I'll die doing something right." The moment he stepped into the open, the drones spotted movement. A high-pitched alarm filled the air, followed by a burst of energy fire. Cole sprinted through the ruins, carrying Rhea in his arms as beams tore through the debris. He jumped over collapsed walls, his exoskeleton absorbing the shock with loud metallic groans. The battery warning blinked red. Draining fast under the extra load, Rhea clung weakly to his armor, whispering something in her own language, something like a prayer. Cole ducked into a half-destroyed bunker and rolled behind a collapsed wall. The drones circled outside, scanning the area before finally flying away. Cole didn't move until their hum vanished into the storm. When he finally looked down, Rhea's eyes were half open. "Why?" she murmured. "Why save me?" Cole rested his head back against the wall, breathing hard. "Because someone should have saved my team when they were dying too," he said quietly. She stared at him in silence, her expression softening for the first time. Lightning split the sky again, casting their shadows on the wall. Outside, distant explosions still echoed. But here in this ruined bunker, there was a fragile silence. Cole pulled a ration pack from his pocket, tore it open and held it to her lips. She hesitated, then took a sip, her body trembling with exhaustion. Her eyes met his again, filled with confusion. "You're a strange species." "Human," she whispered. He gave a small laugh. "You'll get used to it." A moment later, his scanner beeped faintly. Motion detected. 50 meters east. Cole's body tensed. He turned off the exoskeleton lights, pressed Rhea's head against his chest, and waited through the shattered window. Faint red dots glowed in the dark. Enemy patrols, they were sweeping the ruins. Methodical and slow, Rhea's voice trembled. "If they find us, kill me first." "Not yourself," Cole shook his head, whispering. "Not going to happen." The patrol moved closer, the sound of their boots scraping on metal echoing like thunder. Cole reached for his sidearm, keeping his breathing low and steady. Rhea closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. She didn't understand why this human wouldn't just run. The patrol passed barely 10 meters away, then disappeared into the storm again. Only when the silence returned did Cole relax his grip. He looked down at her again, this alien he'd carried from the jaws of death. And as the rain began to fall through the shattered roof, he whispered to her, "We're getting out of here." She didn't answer. Her head rested against his chest and her breathing slowed. Cole checked her pulse. It was faint but steady. He stared out into the burning horizon. The war had taken everything from both of them. But in this broken world, Maybe saving one life still meant something, and so, with smoke rising and lightning cutting through the ash, Captain Cole stood again, carrying Rhea in his arms, and began walking toward the endless red horizon. One human, one alien, and a promise the galaxy would never forget. The morning came without sunlight, only a gray storm that hung over the ruins like a shroud. Cole tightened the straps of his exoskeleton, adjusting Rhea's weight against his chest. The suit groaned under the strain, its left servo flickering with a faint orange spark. He ignored the warnings flashing across his visor, focusing only on the path ahead. They had to cross the dead zone, a stretch of land poisoned by radiation and crawling with rogue machines. If they stopped, they'd die. If they moved too slow, the patrols would find them. Rhea stirred weakly in his arms, her skin pale and cold. Her voice came out rough and quiet. "You should have left me." Cole didn't answer at first, his boots crunching over glass and ash. "Maybe," he finally said, "but I'm too stubborn to listen." She gave a weak laugh that ended in a cough. "Humans, always heroes even when you shouldn't be." They walked for hours through the silence. Broken tanks rusted in the sand like bones of a forgotten army. Half-buried helmets, empty rifles, burned-out mechs, all that was left of a war no one remembered how to stop. Every few steps, Cole's scanner beeped softly, detecting faint radiation spikes. He rerouted around the hot spots, whispering to Rhea, "Hold on, we're almost past the worst of it." But she wasn't listening anymore. Her head rested against his shoulder, her breathing shallow. Cole's mind raced. She needed treatment soon. He opened the small med compartment on his exoskeleton and injected her with an anti-rad serum. Her body jerked and she gasped sharply. Her eyes opened for a brief second, glowing faintly blue in the dim light. "Your medicine hurts," she whispered. Cole smiled slightly. "That means it's working." Hours later, the storm grew thicker, turning the sky into a swirling wall of dust. Cole switched the suit to thermal mode, his vision changing to shades of red and black. Shapes flickered in the fog, moving, scanning, searching. Old autonomous drones left over from the war, now acting on corrupted code. Cole crouched low behind a wrecked engine. Holding Rhea tight, the machines glided past, their lights sweeping across the wreckage. One of them stopped, turning its lens toward his position. Cole's heart pounded. He reached for a metal shard and threw it far into the distance. The sound echoed and the drones turned away. Following the noise, he waited a full minute before standing again. Each breath came heavy, his oxygen meter flashing red. The exoskeleton battery dropped to 40%. He needed a recharge before nightfall, or the suit would shut down completely. He searched the wrecks until he found a fallen mech, alien design. Still faintly glowing, Rhea stirred as he knelt beside it, pulling off a cracked power core. "You shouldn't touch that," she murmured weakly. "It's unstable." Cole grinned tiredly. "Good thing I'm not planning to touch it for long." He linked it to his power coupler, sparks bursting across his gloves. The lights flickered, then steadied. The exoskeleton hummed again, alive. When he looked down, Rhea was staring at him. Her eyes were filled with something new, not fear, not anger, but confusion, maybe even curiosity. "You risk everything for someone who tried to kill your kind," she said quietly. Cole adjusted her blanket, keeping her warm against his chest. "I don't care who started the war," he said. "I just care who's still bleeding from it." For a moment, the wind carried no sound at all, only her faint breath against his armor. By sunset, they reached the edge of a canyon, its cliffs glowing faintly with radiation. Cole scanned the depth, too far to climb down safely. The only way across was a broken bridge of metal beams. Half hanging over the abyss, Rhea looked up weakly. "You'll fall," he smiled. "Then I'll fall trying." She stared at him, eyes wet, and whispered, "You don't even know me." Cole's voice was steady. "Maybe not. But I know you're not supposed to die here." He stepped onto the bridge, the metal creaking under their combined weight. Each step made the structure groan like a wounded beast. Halfway across, the beam snapped with a deafening crack. Cole leaped forward, his exoskeleton boosting just enough to carry them to the other side. He landed hard, sparks shooting from the servo joints. Rhea gasped, clutching his arm. "You're insane." He laughed softly. "You keep saying that." The sun finally broke through the clouds for a moment. A thin beam of light fell across the wasteland, painting their shadows long and dark. Cole looked down at her and said, "That light, that's where we're going." She closed her eyes, whispering something in her own tongue, a word that sounded like hope. And for the first time since the war began, Cole believed they might just survive. But as night approached, the scanner beeped again. This time not radiation. This time it was movement. Multiple signals. Heading their way fast, Cole's jaw tightened. He looked at the horizon where the faint lights moved closer through the dust and whispered, "They found us." The next part of their journey would not be a march, it would be a fight for their last breath. The night settled like a heavy curtain, thick with ash and silence. Cole crouched beside a rusted wall, his visor dimmed to night vision. Rhea lay in his arms, wrapped in his torn jacket, her breath shallow but steady. He could hear the faint hum of enemy drones cutting through the fog. Their red eyes glowed faintly through the haze, sweeping like ghost lanterns. Cole whispered into his helmet. No radio signals, no heat signatures. He shut off the exoskeleton's lights and crouched lower. The suit's servos whined softly, a sound that could betray them at any second. He took a deep breath and silenced the motors, locking the suit into manual mode. Now, every movement depended on his own strength, his own body. The fog rolled thicker, swallowing shapes and sound alike. Cole knew they were deep inside enemy territory. The drones were hunting for survivors, cleaning up what the war left behind. He could see their shadows, sleek machines gliding through the air, each one armed with scanners that could read a heartbeat through metal. Rhea stirred slightly and opened her eyes. "They're coming, aren't they?" He nodded, keeping his voice low. "Yeah, too many to fight. Not enough power to run." Her hand trembled as she reached for his chest plate. "Then leave me." Cole shook his head, eyes fixed on the flickering lights beyond the fog. "You're not dying out here." "Not while I can walk," she gave a weak, bitter smile. "Your kind always says that, then you die for nothing." He met her gaze, calm and steady. "Then I'll die for something that isn't hate." The sound of mechanical wings filled the air. A single drone hovered nearby. Cole froze, holding his breath. It scanned the ruins with a low hum, the beam of its sensor brushing over them. He could feel his heart hammering against his ribs. Rhea's hand tightened around his arm. Silently begging him not to move, the drone turned away, its engine whining softly as it drifted back into the mist. Cole waited 10 full seconds before exhaling slowly. Then from the distance came another sound, boots on metal. Not drones this time, but soldiers, alien soldiers, armed and sweeping the field. He could hear them speaking in Rhea's language, sharp and harsh. She closed her eyes and whispered, "They're my people," Cole whispered back. "Then let's hope they're as tired of this war as I am." But luck was not with them. One of the soldiers spotted the faint trail of footprints in the ash. He called out, voice echoing across the ruins. Cole cursed under his breath. Adjusting Rhea's weight and backing away, the soldiers spread out, their armor glowing faintly blue in the darkness. They moved with perfect coordination. Trained hunters on the trail. Cole found an old tunnel entrance half buried under debris. He slipped inside, dragging a metal sheet to cover the opening. Inside it was cold and pitch dark. The air smelled of rust and oil, and every sound echoed like thunder. He sat Rhea down gently and whispered, "Stay quiet. No matter what happens, minutes passed, maybe hours. Time had no meaning in that place." Rhea's voice broke the silence, soft and trembling. "You don't know what they'll do if they find you." "I've seen worse," Cole muttered. Checking the power gauge, 20% left. He'd have to find another power source soon, or the suit would die completely. Suddenly, light flashed through the cracks in the tunnel wall. Voices followed, echoing in the alien tongue. Closer now. Cole pressed his hand over Rhea's mouth gently. They both stayed silent, hearts pounding in sync. The soldiers stopped just above them, scanning the tunnel floor. Then one of them shouted something. Metal boots began to descend. Cole didn't think. He lifted Rhea back into the exoskeleton harness and bolted deeper into the tunnel. The sound of gunfire erupted behind them, blue plasma cutting through the dark. Rhea screamed as the heat brushed past her shoulder. Cole ran faster, his body screaming in pain, his vision flickering red. He smashed through a collapsed wall, sending dust flying everywhere. They emerged into a wide underground chamber, a forgotten command post. Holographic screens still flickered faintly, showing old battle maps. Rhea looked around, her eyes wide with tears. This was one of your bases," she whispered. "My people destroyed it." Cole looked at the faded human flag hanging from the ceiling. Torn and burned, he felt a hollow ache in his chest. Then maybe this is where it ends. He set her down beside a flickering console. Her eyes softened. Why keep saving me when all I've given you is pain? He met her gaze and said quietly, because if one life can be saved, maybe the rest can too. She stared at him for a long moment before whispering, "You're either mad, or the bravest man I've met." Outside, the hunters regrouped. Their voices fading as the fog thickened again. Cole leaned back against the cold wall, his breath shaky but steady. For now they were safe. But he knew it wouldn't last. He looked at Rhea, this enemy who was no longer an enemy, and whispered, "Rest while you can." The storm hasn't even begun yet, and somewhere above them, the sky burned once more, signaling that the war outside was far from over. But inside that dark tunnel, for the first time, hope flickered between a human and an alien, frail, small, but alive. The tunnel stretched for miles, silent except for the soft hum of the exoskeleton and the rasp of Cole's breathing. His visor flickered, switching from night vision to thermal as he scanned ahead. No movement, no signals, only walls of rock and steel, twisted by war. When he finally found a sealed bulkhead door, half buried under debris, he forced it open with his suit's arm servos. A stale, cold wind rushed out, carrying the scent of oil, dust, and something long forgotten. Cole stepped inside cautiously. The metal groaning beneath his boots, it was a bunker, ancient and abandoned, but still standing. Flickering holograms danced weakly on cracked screens, and the walls bore faded insignias of both human and alien wars. He set Rhea down gently on a pile of blankets made from emergency thermal fabric. Her face was pale, her pulse weak, her breath shallow. He removed his helmet and wiped the grime from her forehead, his own hands shaking with exhaustion. "You're safe," he whispered, even though he didn't fully believe it. The bunker was quiet, but it felt too quiet, like the silence before a storm. Cole scavenged through the lockers, finding a medkit and a small canister of filtered oxygen. He set the tank beside her, connecting it to her breathing mask. Her chest rose slightly higher, her color returning bit by bit. She opened her eyes, voice soft. "You should rest. Human." He shook his head. "You need me awake more than I need sleep." Her lips curved faintly. "That's not how survival works." He smiled tiredly. "It is today." For a while, neither spoke. Cole sat beside her, adjusting the power cell on his exoskeleton. It was almost drained again. He needed to find a new one soon or risk being trapped here when it shut down. The screen on his wrist flashed a faint alert. Radiation levels outside rising. They'd have to wait until the storm passed before moving again. Rhea turned her head slowly, her eyes fixed on a rusted plaque on the wall. Symbols written in both human and alien script. "This place," she murmured. "It used to be a joint outpost. Before the betrayal." Cole frowned. "Joint?" She nodded weakly. "Your leaders and mine once tried to build peace here. I was one of the scientists who designed the treaty drones." He stared at her, shock flashing across his face. "You? You worked on the peace project?" She laughed bitterly. "I also worked on the weapon that destroyed it." The words hit him harder than the storm above. He turned away, jaw tight, staring at the floor. "All those cities, all those lives," he muttered. "You built the thing that killed them?" Her voice cracked. "I built something to stop war. They turned it into something else. My name was erased, my work twisted." Tears welled in her eyes, glistening under the dim light. "I tried to stop it, but my own people silenced me." Cole didn't speak. He could hear the faint rumble of distant thunder above the ground. Rhea's voice trembled. "That's why I told you to leave me. I thought I deserved to die out there." He looked back at her, his expression unreadable. Then he knelt down and said quietly, "You might have started something terrible, but you're still trying to end it." "That matters," she blinked at him, confused. "You believe that?" He nodded. "Belief is all that's left in people like us." A faint beeping cut through the silence. His motion scanner. Cole froze, checking the radar display. Movement. 3 signatures approaching slowly through the tunnels. He cursed under his breath, standing up and drawing his sidearm. "Stay down," he whispered, his voice sharp and calm. The metal walls echoed with faint footsteps. Growing closer, Rhea reached for his hand, her voice faint. "If they find us, you have to go." Cole ignored her, adjusting his stance and aiming toward the dark corridor. The light from his visor cut through the dust. 3 figures appeared, tattered, limping, carrying weapons made of scavenged parts. Not soldiers, scavengers, survivors, desperate and hungry. They froze when they saw him, eyes wide at the sight of a working exoskeleton. Cole lowered his weapon slightly. "We're not looking for trouble," the tallest one sneered. "Then you already found it." Before the tension could explode, Rhea spoke from behind him. "Please," she said weakly, "he saved me." "Don't harm him." The scavengers exchanged confused glances. They hadn't expected an alien voice. Their leader hesitated, then spat on the floor. "The war's over. None of it matters anymore." He turned and left, the others following, disappearing into the shadows again. Cole sighed deeply, lowering his weapon. He turned back to Rhea and smiled faintly. "Looks like your reputation still scares people." She gave a tired laugh. Or maybe they just saw what mercy looks like for the first time. The storm above finally began to fade. Cole rechecked the power gauge, 15% left. He looked at her, asleep again, her face peaceful for the first time since he found her, and as he leaned back against the cold wall, he whispered to the quiet room, "Tomorrow we walk again." Outside, the rain washed over the wasteland. And beneath it all, in that forgotten shelter, two enemies slept side by side, not as soldier and target, but as the last fragile hope of what peace could still mean. When dawn came, it brought no sun, only wind, dust, and the roar of another storm. Cole stood at the bunker door, staring into a horizon buried in swirling red sand. He tightened the straps of his exoskeleton and checked the battery. Only 12% left. The suit's servos whined, warning him that another overload could melt the circuits. He didn't care, not anymore. Rhea was alive, barely, and that was reason enough to keep moving. He lifted her once again, the exoskeleton locking around her fragile frame. Her head rested against his shoulder, her breath warm against the steel plate of his armor. She stirred, whispering, "The storm's too strong. You'll die out there." Cole adjusted his helmet and said softly, "We'll both die if we stay." With that, he stepped into the chaos, the door slamming shut behind him. The storm hit like a wall of knives. Sand lashed his visor, static crackling across the glass as lightning flashed in the distance. Each gust nearly threw him off balance. The exoskeleton struggled to stabilize, its servos whining like a wounded beast. He leaned forward, every movement deliberate. His scanner flickered with interference, but one faint signal blinked to the north, a human outpost. If he could reach it, they'd both have a chance. Rhea's voice came faint through the storm. "Why keep going?" He answered without hesitation. "Because that's what humans do. We keep walking until the ground gives out." She tried to smile but coughed instead. "Your kind doesn't know when to quit." Cole chuckled through his cracked helmet. "Yeah, it's our best and worst habit." Hours passed, though time felt meaningless inside that inferno of dust and lightning. Cole's body ached, his throat burned, and every joint in the suit sparked with heat. At one point, he stumbled and fell to his knees. The exoskeleton screamed warnings: temperature overload, servo malfunction, power drain critical. He ignored them all, his mind focused on one thought: keep her alive. When he tried to stand again, his legs trembled, and Rhea's hand weakly brushed his face. "Stop," she whispered. "You'll burn yourself out." He looked at her, his eyes bloodshot. "Then I'll burn bright enough to light your way." Lightning split the sky, illuminating the storm in white and gold through the haze. Cole saw shapes, wrecked alien transports. Half buried in the sand, he pushed toward them, fighting the wind. If he could salvage something, maybe another power core, they could survive the night. He kicked open a cracked door and dragged himself inside, the storm howling behind him. The transport interior was scorched and empty. Except for one flickering console, Cole pried it open, revealing a still glowing energy cell. It pulsed blue, the same tech Rhea's people used. "Will it work?" he asked her. She opened her eyes halfway. "It'll work, but it'll hurt." He didn't ask how. He wired it into his suit's power coupler, ignoring the sparks that burned through his gloves. The lights on his chest flared bright for a moment, then dimmed to steady blue. The system rebooted and pain seared through his spine. Every nerve in his body lit up like fire. He clenched his teeth, refusing to scream. Rhea's hand reached up weakly, touching his cheek, her eyes filled with tears. "You're destroying yourself," Cole smiled faintly. "You said that yesterday." Then he lifted her again, walking out into the storm. The new power core gave the exoskeleton strength, but it came at a cost. Each pulse of energy burned through his body. Each step left smoke rising from the vents on his armor. Hours later, as the storm began to fade, they reached the edge of a canyon. Below, a shimmering field of plasma separated two war zones, the human and alien borders. Beyond that light, safety waited. Cole stared down at it, the final barrier. Rhea whispered, "It's suicide. The bridge can't hold you in that suit." He looked down at her and smiled tiredly. "Then I'll hold it together myself." As the winds eased, Cole found an old cargo crawler half buried nearby. He set Rhea down inside, found an oxygen pod, and sealed her inside for protection. She pounded weakly on the glass, tears in her eyes. "Don't go out there again." Cole touched the pod's surface, his hand trembling. "I'll come back," he said. "That's a promise." Then he turned and stepped into the storm again. The wind swallowed him, lightning flashing behind his silhouette inside the pod. Rhea could hear his voice through the comm, broken, fading, still walking. Still human. Static crackled, then silence. She closed her eyes, pressing her hands against the glass, whispering his name, but outside, the faint outline of a man still moved through the storm, each step slower than the last, each breath heavier. And though the storm screamed around him, Cole's resolve burned brighter than the lightning. He carried her through 3 days of hell, and though his body began to fail, his heart, the same heart that refused to leave her in the ruins, kept him going, because somewhere beyond that storm, there was still hope, and for Captain Cole, that was worth dying for. The third day came with silence, no storm, no wind, only the heavy stillness that follows a world too tired to keep fighting. Cole's exoskeleton sparked faintly as he trudged forward, his body swaying under the dead weight of exhaustion. Rhea stirred in his arms, her eyes fluttering open to the sight of endless wasteland glowing beneath a sky split by lightning scars. How
long?"
she whispered weakly. Cole's voice was rough, nearly gone. 3 days. Her gaze softened. "You should have let me die," he managed a faint grin. "You said that every day, and I ignored you every time." The landscape ahead shimmered, a massive energy bridge spanning a chasm of molten plasma. Its light painted everything in shades of gold and blue, dancing across Cole's cracked visor. That bridge was the border. On the other side lay the neutral zone, the safe lands, but even from here, he could see figures moving along it, shapes of alien patrols and hovering drones. He stopped, scanning the area, his helmet HUD blinking faint warnings. Core temperature critical. Muscular integrity, 18%. He took a slow breath and whispered to himself. One last mile. Rhea's eyes followed his gaze, her expression twisting in despair. "You can't go through them. Cole, they'll kill you." He shook his head slowly. "Maybe, but if I stop now, everything we did means nothing." He set her down gently behind a broken transport shell, his armor creaking under the motion. The plasma light reflected off her pale skin, giving her an almost ethereal glow. She reached out, gripping his arm weakly. "Please, don't," he interrupted softly. "If I don't walk that bridge, you won't live to see another sunrise." Before she could answer, a siren echoed across the canyon. Drones had detected the human energy signature. Cole cursed under his breath and slammed a new power cell into his suit. The jolt nearly knocked him down. The exoskeleton screamed with overdrive heat. He stood again, steam rising from the vents on his back. "Stay hidden," he said. "I'll come back for you." Rhea's voice cracked. "You always say that. Just make sure this time you mean it." Cole sprinted toward the bridge. The world seemed to blur as adrenaline pushed him past his limits. The plasma light pulsed beneath his boots, every step echoing with the hum of raw energy. Drones spotted him instantly. Red lasers marked his chest, plasma bolts ripping through the air. He jumped aside, rolling across the metal, his exoskeleton taking the hit, sparks spraying into the glowing void. His arm servos locked from the impact, but he forced them back online. "Come on, old bones," he growled. "Don't quit on me now." He charged forward again, firing short bursts from his sidearm. One drone exploded mid-air, another spiraled down into the plasma, but more came, 6, maybe 8, circling like vultures. The suit's power meter dipped to 5%, alarms screaming through his headset. Rhea's faint voice came through the comm link, trembling. "Cole, stop. You'll die." He laughed breathlessly, ducking behind a beam. "You keep saying that like it's news." The largest drone descended, its cannon glowing bright. Cole looked up at it through cracked glass. His reflection burning in its lens, he whispered, "For peace," and fired his last shot. The bullet hit the drone's core. It erupted in a flash that lit the canyon like dawn. The blast threw Cole backward, his armor cracking, his back slamming against the bridge rail. Pain exploded through his body. His HUD went dark, and the exoskeleton shut down completely. He could barely move now, but he crawled inch by inch, dragging himself across the bridge, his gloves melting from the heat. Rhea's voice called his name again, broken by static. "Cole, don't you dare stop!" He smiled weakly, pressing his helmet's side button, his voice barely audible. "Still walking, still keeping my word." Then he heard them. Footsteps, armored, heavy alien soldiers approached from the far side of the bridge, weapons drawn. Their leader shouted, "Human, drop your weapon. You're under arrest." Cole looked up, his voice shaking. "I'm not your enemy." They hesitated, unsure, and from the canyon's edge, Rhea appeared, stumbling out into the light. Her voice hoarse but fierce. "Don't shoot. He carried me through hell. He's not your enemy, he's the reason I'm alive." The soldiers froze. Disbelief written across their faces, Rhea reached him. Falling to her knees beside his smoking armor, she placed her hands on his chest plate, crying, "Please, open your eyes." His voice came faintly through the damaged helmet. "Told you. I'd bring you home." Then his body went limp. The soldiers lowered their weapons, silence spreading across the bridge. Rhea pressed her forehead against his, tears mixing with the glowing plasma dust. Around them, the storm finally broke, the clouds parted, letting sunlight fall across the bridge. The first true sunlight in years, and as it bathed them both in light, Rhea whispered through her tears, "You fool, you beautiful fool. You carried more than me. You carried hope." Above them, the world burned a little less, and below, the chasm of fire rumbled softly, like an ancient heart learning how to beat again. The sun rose over the wasteland for the first time in weeks, its pale light cutting through the smoke and dust. The bridge still shimmered with the glow of plasma beneath it, and at its center lay the man who refused to fall. Cole's armor was blackened and cracked, steam rising from the vents where the exoskeleton had melted into his skin. His body no longer moved, but his arms were still locked tight around Rhea, as if even death would have to pry her from his grip. The alien soldiers stood in silence, unsure what to do. Their commander, a tall figure in silver armor, stepped forward slowly, his visor reflecting the scene before him. He looked at Rhea, kneeling beside Cole's still body, her face streaked with tears and dust. "You said he carried you for 3 days," the commander said quietly. "Through the dead zone? Through the storm?" Rhea nodded, her voice trembling. "He saved me when I told him not to. He saved me when I wanted to die." The commander's expression softened. Then perhaps the stories about humans were wrong. Medics rushed forward, scanning Cole's body, vitals weak, one reported. "But he's still alive, barely," Rhea gasped, gripping his gloved hand. "You hear that, Cole? You stubborn fool, you're still here." There was no answer but a faint flicker of movement. His fingers twitched once against hers. It was enough. "Get him to the outpost," she ordered, her voice sharp again. "Now." They carried him across the bridge on a stretcher made of repurposed armor plates. The exoskeleton hissed and sparked, its servos dying one by one every time the stretcher tilted. Rhea followed beside it, refusing to let go of his hand. When they reached the border camp, soldiers from both sides stopped what they were doing, staring in stunned silence. A human soldier and an alien scientist walking together. Broken but alive, no one had ever seen that before. Cole was taken into a medical tent, the doctors working fast. They cut away the burned armor and connected his body to oxygen and neural stabilizers. The human med officer, her eyes wide with disbelief, whispered, "You carried her across the border? Through the dead zone?" Rhea nodded faintly. "He carried me through hell itself." The doctor looked down at Cole, voice soft. "Then he's earned more than a medal. He's earned a place in history." Hours passed, and Rhea sat beside his bed, machines beeped softly. Tracing the fragile rhythm of his heart, she spoke quietly, telling him stories to fill the silence, stories of her world, of the ocean cities that once floated above the clouds. She told him how her people once believed humans were monsters, built only for war, and how, somewhere along the way, they had all forgotten what courage really meant. "You reminded me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You reminded me what it looks like." When Cole finally opened his eyes, the world was soft and white around him. For a moment he thought he was still dreaming. Rhea was sitting beside him, her hand wrapped in his. He tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. She leaned closer, smiling through her tears. "Welcome back, hero." He managed a faint laugh that turned into a cough. "Hero? I'm just a guy who hates leaving things undone." Her eyes shimmered. "You didn't just save me. You saved everything." Cole frowned weakly. "The war," she shook her head, "ended." He blinked in disbelief. "Ended?" She nodded slowly. "When they saw you, what you did, they stopped firing. The story spread faster than the bullets ever did." He looked away, tears filling his eyes. "All that time, I thought I was just trying to save one person," he said, his voice rough. "Didn't realize you'd turn it into peace." Rhea smiled softly. "You carried more than me, Cole. You carried the weight of both worlds." Weeks later, when he was strong enough to walk again, Cole stood on the rebuilt border bridge, the same bridge now renamed the Bridge of Light. Two banners hung side by side. One human, one alien. Fluttering in the same wind, he stood there with Rhea, watching convoys of aid cross in both directions. Soldiers who once aimed guns now carried food and medicine. Children waved as they passed, shouting his name, the man who wouldn't let go. Rhea looked at him, eyes warm. "They'll tell stories about you for generations." Cole shook his head, smiling. "Make sure they remember you too. I was just the legs. You were the heart." She laughed softly. "Then together we were human enough." The sun dipped low, painting the bridge in gold. Cole turned toward her, his expression gentle. "So, what now?" he asked. She smiled. "Now we rebuild. Not as soldiers, not as enemies, but as the last two fools who believed peace was worth dying for." As the light faded and the wind whispered across the canyon, Cole took one final look at the horizon, the same one he'd walked through fire to reach, and for the first time in his life, he didn't see war or ash. He saw hope, and beside him, the alien woman he had refused to abandon smiled at the same sky. Two souls, once enemies, now bound by something stronger than blood or treaty, a promise that humanity, even in its brokenness, could still lift the galaxy to its feet. One step, one act of mercy, one stubborn human at a time.